Good morning or good afternoon from wherever you are watching around the country. Welcome to the 2022 amazing April season of PharSide Pholios. Thanks for joining us as we highlight authors during this National Reading Month, Drop Everything and Read Month, and School Library Month in the month of April with a series of amazing author interviews. Today's special guest, we have a double scoop for you, our viewers today, with Amanda Muratoff and Kayla Hansen. You can ask Amanda anything about riding horses or motorcycles, and she can tell you. Not a daredevil, but she definitely finds a great joy in the wind flowing through her hair. Art has always been a staple in our life, from creative writing to painting. First published at age 10, she is an award-winning published artist, though she left her career in VFX to chase the passion of her childhood. The memories of late-night writing, binges, glued to the computer screen at 1 a.m, brought her back to the fantasy worlds she created. Kayla is a Shakespeare fanatic. Give her a quote, she can tell you which play it's from. In her university years, she studied theater with a focus on directing while harboring a deep desire to write fiction. Creative writing has followed her through every endeavor, there for her after a long night like a comforting mug of Earl Grey tea. Working at Disneyland in her early 20s further invigorated her yearning to tell stories of fantastical worlds and magic. Whenever she needed a motivation, she remembered meeting Tracy Hickman, writer of Dragonlance, and as a young teen, and his encouragement to never stop writing. It always led her back to the pages. So welcome to the Far Side, Amanda Muratoff and Kayla Hansen.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
We're so excited to have you guys here with us on the Far Side. We are talking about the first book in the series, Embrace of the Shade. Embrace of the Shade. And the prologue opens up with Bellamy fought the shade's grasp, kicking against the crumbling marble. How do you guys feel this opening line sets the stage for, kind of what comes next?
I'll take this one. So for us, fighting against your situation is incredibly important through the entire series. And so even though Bellamy, ultimately it's revealed that he knows he's in an impossible situation, he knows that there's no escaping his situation, he still fights. And that, to me, just epitomizes a lot of the story of the books, the entire series, and not just Embrace of the Shade, because always fighting your situation. If you're not happy with it, obviously Bellamy isn't, since he's kicking as he goes. But that's a huge theme through everything. And the other idea of that first sentence too is mentioning shades. They're obviously in the series, or the book title rather. And we wanted to create this air of mystery around them, that we didn't really know who they were, what they were. And that becomes really important later on in the book, that they're kind of this overarching kind of mystery. And so that was the whole goal with that first sentence, is to bring people into the fight, and then just kind of introduce them to some fun mystery that's going to be coming.
So right off the bat, you see Bellamy struggling between surrendering, do I, throw a punch? Do I fight my way out, or just, just kind of giving up and, physically almost to his captor? How will completion or the failure to complete tasks that play throughout the story, as it does in the prologue, where we see, by the shade, by his markings, had completed 12 tasks in comparison to Bellamy's 2. So how does kind of that importance of completing a task play out?
So the tasks are a really important part of the Shades, like, just purpose. Like, their whole goal is to create or finish tasks for their master, and so that's how they earn these markings. And so by establishing that the Shade who had captured Bellamy had 12 as opposed to him only having 2, it creates a clear line of experience between the two, number one. But the big thing that also comes into this, that kind of becomes a theme throughout the whole book, is it's this question where you mention it. It's failure versus completion. And the Shades have a very unilateral way of thinking where it's black, white, complete it or don't complete it. There's nothing in between. But the thing that's actually that's really fun about the first book, especially, is as we start introducing the other characters, who actually are the main characters of the book. Bellamy is a vehicle, I will admit at the beginning. Kin and Anne-Marie are our actual main characters. Kin, the whole thing is that Kin is living in this black and white world, and he doesn't really see anything in between. But then here comes Anne-Marie, and she kind of opens up this ability to see the grays, and let maybe this isn't as simple as just failure and completion, that there's more to it. And so that's kind of the idea of that.
Okay. Amanda, the story talks also about the challenge of power, betrayal, and consequences. What are some of the different responses to the offer of power and how it's used? You've got an image that where the actress sent a fire crackling on the broken altar served as kind of an indication of a type of evil being challenged within the novel.
I would say that it definitely does. You've picked up on a good visual there. The fire on the altar is very symbolic of the evil they face. It's an unrestrained, destructive evil, and it stems from an ancient, very mysterious source. So that line is actually very indicative of the powers within this book. But not all Shades are inherently bad people. Some of them have just gone down a road of poor decisions and wind up making yet another mistake. Through the series, we see others approached with the offer of power, and not all take it, and some do. And it's without giving away spoilers, it's really interesting to see people's different reactions to the offer of this kind of magical ability.
So Amanda, along with that, without giving the whole story away, what's the premise, of Embrace of the Shade? And this is just the first of the series, and you can talk about actually how many there are in total.
So we currently have 10 books published. Embrace of the Shade is book 1. And it centers around the two main characters, Kin and Anne-Marie. And Kin is more of an anti-hero type character with questionable ethics and decision-making skills. But he's not all bad. We explore the good within him, like Kayla mentioned previously, by using Anne-Marie to draw it out. So she shows him there's another way. And even though she's not completely moral herself, they kind of both learn to overcome, or rather not overcome, some of their vices together. They're both not good at trusting people, and that's a big part of their struggle in the first book. Yet they're still drawn to each other, and so it kind of forces them to reconsider their chosen life. And as the series goes on, our 10 books are broken into a trilogy, a quadrilogy, and another trilogy, and each set of books has their own main characters. But because it's all one storyline and one universe, their paths weave together. So, in the first series, you meet Kin and Anne-Marie, and then in the second series, you actually see them from those main characters' perspective. And so it's kind of like building the fantasy Avengers in a way, as the series goes on and all these important, special people find their way to each other.
So, and you guys are a team, writing as a team. So with the process, how are you able to maintain the consistency, with the thread of the story?
Well, I can say that Amanda and I plan a lot. There's a lot of planning that happens, but also the thing that she and I have that I would argue actually make us really unique as co-writers is Amanda and I actually grew up writing together. We used to write for pleasure. We met online, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, but we met online, and we have always had this communication and conversation online. We actually just would essentially write for pleasure between the two of us in kind of a more of a I control a character, she controls a character kind of way, and then just kind of write these stories out just for us. And so it's kind of an interesting situation where we actually write very similarly. Our styles are very similar, just because literally for 20 years we've been writing together. And so what kind of happened is, like, in creating our way that we started writing these books, it was a little bit of adjustment for us because we had to stop going from, okay, this character does a paragraph and then this character does a paragraph, and now we have to start interweaving it. So but a lot of the origins of that writing style still hold true. So, like, there's characters that we basically consider mine because they were kind of created in my brain, and then there's characters that are Amanda's. I mean, she's not going to argue with me on this. Amory's her and Kin is me. Like, that's the way that it works. And so it kind of creates these genuine conversations too between the characters, because it's genuinely me and Amanda going back and forth, like saying things, and then the misunderstandings, the miscommunications, 100% real, like 100% real.
So this series, like you said, falls into this realm of fantasy. Amanda, what drew you to writing in fantasy versus, romance or mystery or true crime or sci-fi? What draw you into that genre?
I've always been drawn to fantasy. I've been reading fantasy since I could remember, and I feel like it's like I like sci-fi, but to me, there's nothing grounding sci-fi to reality. And I mean, I will say I do have like a couple like romance novels that are, tucked away somewhere that I never finished writing. But when it comes down to it, fantasy is the perfect blend of real and magic and romance. Like, it has all the fantastical elements of magic but with still having it grounded in like a tangible reality. Even if that is a fantasy world that we built, it's still based off of real life. So I feel like it adds just the right amount of fantasy with realism. And, book one is special because, even 20 years ago when we started building this world, it started with Kin and Emery. Those two, they were the original characters that got us started. And I think because of that, they'll always be dear to us.
So since you've written this series, full, 10 published in the series, what makes this stand out from maybe any other works in the fantasy genre that maybe you've read or written yourselves, Kayla?
So this stands out to me just because, I mean, Amanda touched on it. It's the pieces of reality. I will say Amanda and I don't shy away from difficult subjects. And it's one of the things that we really love about these books is they're telling stories in a fantasy world, but they're still relevant to current society and current life. Like, we don't shy away from LGBT, like we introduce those characters in our books. We don't shy away from women's health issues. That's one of my favorite things that are in the books as a woman myself, obviously. Those kind of subjects are usually taboo. We don't talk about them that much. And Amanda and I don't like that. We're like, no, let's get these there. We need to see these. We need to see these characters who as real people. And because that's what they are to us. Like, these are real people to us because we've taken, like she said, 20 years. These characters have been around in our lives. And I mean, you'll hear it too. Every author will admit to a point that every character has a little bit of them in it. That is 100% true. Like, at least in my experience, like, it's fun to experience these issues and deal with these issues through another character's eyes. And I really love the way the interweaving too, because then we really can genuinely see because we switch perspectives each chapter, so it's from a different character's perspective, essentially telling the story, and so you can see these situations from different people's perspectives, and that's life. Like, everyone sees an issue differently based on their own personal experiences, and so that's one of the things that we really focus on and try to do. And I would also argue that our book series is unique also with the interweaving and the timeline and the way that we do it. No joke, Amanda and I have an Excel sheet to literally keep track of every week in the year. So this character is here at this time and this character is here. Would they possibly have run into each other? You know, so we actually have to keep a really detailed sheet to keep track of that. And that's one of the really cool things I think about our series as well.
And I think that, you know, develops, since you've got such history, the two of you have such history together as writers, that you're able to do that. And that, I think that's just simply amazing that you have that. One, you have the communication, you have a plan, you know, this relationship between you two have, you know, you've had 20 years of writing together that's produced this whole series, fantasy series that, you know, I just began with the book 1. So I'm new to the series, but definitely after, you know, coming towards the end, you know, you want to know what happens next. You definitely have, both of you definitely have a way with, you know, how you've developed the characters, just, you know, how you set the stage from, you know, chapter to chapter, that just, you know, draws the reader in. And so I commend you not only as a person who reads, but as a librarian. We like, you know, having books like that on our shelves that we can recommend to readers that say, if you like this, then you're definitely gonna enjoy this one. So now I've got, you know of another series that I can recommend to readers looking, you know, in that genre, or introducing, you know, readers to fantasy who may have not, you know, thought about, you know, jumping into fantasy before, but now I've got a series to introduce them. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
It's our pleasure.
So, you know, the readers are introduced to, you mentioned the characters of Ken and Smitha. They found themselves in a library looking for like their specific text, which was, I mean, I think the way they came together in the library was really neat. How does that initial meeting kind of establish a connection or relationship?
Well, Samantha, who is actually Amory because she is a woman of many names, she works with Ken because he is going to expose her if she doesn't. You know, he's in this circumstance where he could ruin her plans to get the forbidden text that she needs from the library's tower. And so she kind of has to work with him. And, you know, she doesn't argue with herself too much on it because he's kind of good looking. So, but it's kind of ironic because they, like, it's a metaphor for love in some ways, because at the end of the day, like, they think they're seeking completely different things. They're looking for different books, yes, but the books they're looking for are actually meant to lead them to exactly the same thing. So I feel like that's kind of how life can be sometimes, where you meet someone and that person is looking for X and you're looking for Y, but it turns out both of you are actually looking for Z and you didn't know it the entire time. So I feel like it's metaphorically accurate for their relationship for sure.
So let's talk about this writing journey that the two of you have been on. How did you come together as a team? I know Kayla mentioned that it's been over 20 years, but how did you originally connect, create this whole series?
We met on a kid's site when I was 12 years old and she was 13. The site was called Neopets, for those who remember. Even for those who still play, apparently it's still active. But we met on Neopets and we started building the world. And, you know, from there we moved to AOL Instant Messenger. and forums. We had our own like forum board that we used privately to write our stories, and it escalated from there. We didn't meet in person actually until I was 19, and I believe Kayla was 20, on a fortuitous vacation to California, where Kayla lived at the time. And so we finally met and we hit it off, and it's been history ever since.
Yeah, it was kind of funny when we initially started talking about writing the series. We kind of had this reflective moment where we realized, all of these words that we'd written, this world that we had created. Admittedly, some of it while we were very angsty teenagers. Kid and Anne-Marie, I don't think you want to see what they used to be like. Because let's just say we were, 15, 16 when Kid and Anne-Marie were initially created. But anyways, when we kind of had this moment that we were like, we have written over 1 million words in this universe, in this world with these characters, but it's in a format that we can't share. Like it's a mess. It's jumbled. The plot lines don't, line up, things like that. But what are we doing? Like we can write 1 million words. We can write quickly. Like we get into it, and Amanda and I will literally go for 8 hours in a day, like what are we doing? Why aren't we writing this in a format that we can actually share? And so we just hit this point in our lives. I think it was like 3 years ago now, where four. Yeah, you were about to have a baby, and I was in between jobs, and so we were like, instead of just, we were talking about revisiting Ken and Anne-Marie and like the way that we wrote before, and we're like, we should try and evaluate and do this in a different way. And that's when we discussed actually writing the books. And it was a little bit of an adjustment to get used to writing in a book format. And definitely the first 3 books took a lot longer for us to get out and put together because we were still growing used to that, which is Embrace of the Shade and then Blood of the Key and Unraveling of the Soul, which are the first trilogy. But then I will say after that, like Amanda and I clicked into the method and books just flow. They just come out. And it's still true that she and we write, on an average, probably like 4,000 words a day-ish, at least.
Yeah, we're about 1,000 words an hour when we're
wow.
Working. Yeah.
That's amazing. Had either of you written anything individually prior to, writing together, or had you published individually prior to coming together to write?
Nothing serious.
No.
Short stories.
Not published.
I think I'm in a couple of poetry books.
Yeah, me too. I published a few poems. I was published in a newspaper when I was 10 years old. And, I've got a couple books of my own that are sitting there. But when it comes down to it, we simply write better. Not necessarily better, but definitely better. But we write smoother when we write together.
We complement each other.
Yeah, we have someone to like be accountable to as well. That's like a hard thing for writers, I think, is because you're by yourself, and the only person to hold you accountable is yourself. But in our case, we, have each other. I'm pointing the wrong way.
And it sort of gives you another set of eyes too.
Yeah.
Oh, Amanda catches things that I do all the time, and like there's definitely moments where we're like, wait, we already talked about this. Wait, didn't we discuss something else? Like there's definitely moments like that. And it's nice to have the second set of eyes to be able to help. And then I started to mention it, Amanda and I, in our writing styles, even though we did grow up together, we still complement each other in our strengths. She is way more the plot person. Like she will just get into the action and just keep going and get all of the action items out, where then I'm the one kind of trailing behind, filling in all the imagery. And so that's one of the things that we've kind of joked about, that we almost can't write without each other, because I would get so bogged down in what do the trees look like? But she would, just keep going without any kind of painting of the imagery and stuff like that. So it's nice because we complement each other in that sense.
Well, I think that's an amazing thing to, just to have, you have a sounding board to bounce your ideas off of, you're able to, catch the things, that you might have missed or overlooked or that you didn't see when you got a, second set of eyes, kind of looking. now that you've, published, multiple times over, is there anything that, you would do differently, with how you've, written and published, or is there something that you hope to see in the future for this particular series?
I think if we had started now with everything we know, I feel like we would have slowed down. We were in such a hurry, and speaking for myself specifically, I know I was in a rush. I was so excited to get the stories out there, and I think we may have jumped the gun a little bit in the beginning with trying to get the books out as quickly as we could, instead of slowing down and looking at like the bigger picture. And I mean, as far as the future goes, we have a few connections to Netflix, so we'll see. But we definitely have some goals of seeing our work on big or small screens.
All right, we will look forward to that when it happens, because we are very positive on this side at the PharSide, where we believe in our authors and in their dreams, and in their visions for their work. So we definitely believe that, yeah, this would be a great series for Netflix, for Hulu, for Peacock, whatever the outlet that picks it up. I'm sure you're going to have an amazing pitch. You've got an amazing pitch for this project. So I think it's something, I mean, that would be doable, and that you've got the audience. You've got an audience for your work. So that's another part of it too. What is something that you guys hope that readers will think about or take away, from starting the series with this first book, Embrace of the Shade, and continue like, okay, I'm going to take this out of this one, and then I'm going to read the next in the series, or the rest of the series?
I think it's just the excitement. Like it's about getting into the stories, and I mentioned it before. It's seeing those stories and those messages, and wanting to know what happens next in the characters' lives. I mean, you mentioned it before. You want to start seeing what's going to happen next, and it just keeps going. Like it keeps coming, and these characters are so diverse and interesting to see them coming together and working through their differences, working through their issues, working through their situations in order to try to just create the solution. And that's the thing, is like, we're always looking for solutions to things. And so how are these characters going to do that? Because there is this overarching evil that, we mentioned at the beginning, that came with that first image of the fire, who is not good. Like, it's not good for the world. And so Amanda mentioned it, Avengers, like, they got to come together and work it out, work through their differences. And so it's seeing those messages and seeing those ideas just coming to life. And hopefully that's what keeps the readers going. It's what keeps us going. I mean, Amanda and I know personally, I'm actually rereading one of our books right now. And I know she does it every once in a while too. Like, we both definitely have like our favorite scenes and things like that we'll go back to and revisit, like when we're feeling blue and stuff like that. And that's one of those things that I think is why I'm a fantasy reader too, is like, it's this difference from reality. It's the thing that can take me away from my current situation. And even though these characters are grounded in reality, grounded in these real life situations, it's seeing them overcome.
So, I mean, Amanda, so how did you see this being a series from the beginning when you guys started? Did you see this a series, or did you, at the jump, or you're like, oh, we're just going to write one book, one book together, and, we'll see what happens?
I don't think either of us ever viewed this as being a one book thing. Because of the way we started building the world and we started writing these characters, we'd written over 1 million words by the time we were 20 years old. And that was, over 10 years ago now. And there was so much story to tell. There was so much that we weren't sure if it was going to be 12 books or 14 books, but right now it looks like it's going to land on 13 total. you know, hopefully by the end of the year. But yeah, we always knew it was going to be a big story, and it wasn't going to be like 1, 2, or 3 books.
Well, and I don't think we even think it's going to end at 13. I think both of us know that we're going to end up coming back to Fantasia.
There might be more, like side stories and
not with these characters. Yeah,
spin-offs for sure.
So, I mean, you mentioned like, you know, going back and rereading, rereading some of your work. Have you found, you know, bits and pieces that maybe, here's something I would add, or something that I would change and maybe pick up in the next installment?
I'm pretty sure Kayla's really tired of me saying, hey, I want to change this word. It's bothering me. And it's like 4 books ago, and I'll be like, it's bothering me. We need to change this word. So I feel like it's like any kind of art expression, you know, where it's hard to just let something be done because you just want to keep changing it. You want to keep improving it. You know, we get better as writers as we go through. And so, you know, I always want to go back to book 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to go through them again and edit them again. But, you know, I have to let them go at some point. And if I bring that up again, I think Kayla might.
Yeah. I mean, I accept that some things are still going to happen as you continue recording the audiobooks, Amanda. I accept that there will be more things. But hopefully books 1 and 2 are done since you've done the audiobooks for those already. Yeah. But to touch the other part of that question too, as far as like different ideas of things to explore in future series, absolutely. That 100% comes up. There's actually situations all the time when Amanda and I are plotting and planning what's happening in the last 3 books, because that's what we're working on right now. Of, hey, what about this possible story arc? And we're like, no, let's not touch that. We'll save that for something in the future. And like, we have like a novella, a minor short story novella, essentially, that we wrote that kind of touches on some of the things too that we integrated into the series, but it was like, you know, the prequel kind of idea. So that's something that we have talked about, like, you know, minor little spin-off, you know, novellas, maybe even to tell kind of these backstories and side stories.
So what you've written together, you've published, you know, this whole series together, you know, you created a full out fantasy world. I mean, full out world with, you know, places and unique entities and things, and names and, you know, names and characters, you know, that are unique and different. What is something that you've learned about yourself, you know, through, you know, this whole process of writing, you know, as a team?
I've learned how versatile I can be. I learned that being an indie writer isn't just about writing. Surprise, surprise. I have to edit, market, design, manage websites, author promotions. You know, there's so much to do. It's never ending with how many hats I have to wear. And it's amazing to see myself do all of it, along with conventions and events. And I had no idea I could do all that. You know, people often think writers, oh, you know, you just sit there and you write. That's such a small part of it. And I had no idea that that was true. And I also had no idea that I was capable of doing it.
Yeah, I think it's the overcoming. It's the finding new problems and new solutions. And that's one of the things that had to spin off of this for myself. That's been it for me too. Like, it's realizing what I'm capable of. And it's kind of like it's a booster in a way, because I definitely struggle with mental health. I know Amanda does as well, in being self-confident. That's a huge issue for me. And so actually having a physical book that I can hold on to and be like, I did this, is really amazing. And like, that's the thing for me that has been so amazing about this journey, is just being able to create a completely unique world with unique cultures and unique countries and unique peoples. And it's just another way to express all these things that are inside of us. And that's just my favorite thing about it, and discovering more about myself as a person and as a human through the whole process.
Now, there may be those in our live audience as well as those who may, who will watch the replay, who may aspire to write, because, I mean, this kind of broadcast came out of a book club. So what are some, like, writing nuggets or that you could, give to an aspiring writer who's got a concept or idea?
I would say just don't give up. It's we're told as writers that most of us fail. You know, the top 5% of writers are the only ones who succeed. And that's probably true, but how do you fail as a writer? The only way to fail is to stop. And so that means the power to fail or succeed completely rests within you. The only way for you to fail is to stop. So if you just keep going, if you keep writing and you keep trying, you'll be a successful writer because you won't have given up on yourself. And to me, that's like the biggest thing I could say is just keep writing. Don't give up.
Just do it. Like, that's the thing is I struggled with that for a long time. I really wanted to publish since I was, I was 13. I wanted to be the youngest published author before the guy who wrote Aragon beat me, but that's beside the point. But like, I never thought I'd write a book. Like, even though when I was younger, aspired to be an author, wanted to be an author as a career, obviously ended up going a different route, studying theater, but storytelling. It always came back to storytelling. But just don't, like Amanda said, just do it. Just don't stop. You're the only one who has control of the situation, and you just have to go for it. You just have to do it. Like, and as far as staying confident, I like to go back and reread and see what I've come from. And that's one of the things that kind of helps encourage me to keep going too, is that I can see how angsty and absolutely terrible Kin and Anne-Marie were when Amanda and I were writing when we were 15, and now I can see Kin and Anne-Marie and how we now have fans who come to us and tell us that they absolutely adore those characters. That Anne-Marie is like this inspiration. She's, the strong female lead that they've been looking for, and that their relationship is so real. Like, and I'm like, that's what it's all about. Like, you grow, you always grow. Every time you write, you grow. So just keep growing.
So thank you so much, Amanda and Kayla, for just sharing your wealth of experience, sharing Embrace of the Shade with us. And so we definitely are going to look into and be a part of that entire series, that we've got a new series for us to follow at Fantasy Wise and introduce not only our book club to, but also other readers out there. This is Drop Everything and Read month, guys. It's April. It's last day of April. Drop everything and read. So if you're dropping everything and reading on today, definitely you can start with the first book in the series, Embrace of the Shade. That's the first book. And then you can follow along and fall in love with the rest of the series. So how can people follow you on social media and connect with what you're doing?
We have a Facebook page, which you can definitely follow. We've also just started a Facebook group. It's brand new, called The Rebel's Hearth. And you're welcome to come join us for discussions about the books. We do giveaways and prizes and games. We're also on Instagram, and our website is pantracia.com. And I will try to spell that without messing up. It is pantracia.com. And our Instagram handles are _Muratoff_author. And then this one, I can do it. This one is
K Hansen
_author for Instagram.
Well, I'd like to thank my guests, Amanda Muratoff and Kayla Hansen, for spending time with us this afternoon on the PharSide. And so we just definitely wish you continued success with Embrace of the Shade, the whole Pantracia Chronicles, and the finishing out of that, and all of the stuff that you have forthcoming. And so for our audience who watched us live, for those who are going to replay, make sure you're staying tuned to the PharSide Coed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts. We're closing out our amazing April, which was National Poetry Month, as well as School Library Month. So support your local libraries, guys. Come on now. Support your school libraries and keep reading. Drop everything and read. It's dropping everything and read month. Pick up a fantasy novel. And if you're going to pick up one today, and pick up number 1, the book 1 of the series, Embrace of the Shade by Amanda Muratoff and Kayla Hansen. You won't be disappointed. You're going to love it and fall in love with the story and the characters. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed and have a great afternoon.